Dean Croke joins us this morning. We'll talk to Packrat here in a minute. Dean, it's interesting too because I've got a story I'm gonna probably get a chance to unpack later about the numbers came in from the ambush that the CVSA does. The you gotta be kidding me brake ambush they do, which is their brake safety day on April 22nd of 2025. Those numbers came in. I bring this up because the last guest on Monday's Nemo Nation, the long conversation, the post trip, as we like to call it, is Adrian Gilday. The CVSA Deputy Executive Director is going to be joining Dave and I on the show. And I wanted to kind of give you a sense. You'll recognize some of the names that are coming up on Monday. Ramel Watley, Ed Garston, who is a Forbes contributor in transportation, Chris Jolly, Sergio Avedian will be joining us as well, and Ramon Dillon is going to be joining us as well too. So to kind of give you a sense of, we are on Nemo Nation and here trying to reach out and give people perspectives not only from inside the country but from all over the place as well too. There's so many people that have a stake in trucking right now, and I don't think a lot of our listeners realize all of the stakeholders in the industry, right?
Yeah. We had part of our outreach at DAT is we had Damon Grewell from Centurion up in British Columbia, and he runs refrigerated teams into the US, and he has a lot of drivers that are from minority groups, a lot of immigrant drivers, and we had a great discussion about some of the challenges they face as it relates to food and culture. I think there's a lot of different subcomponents of the industry that we tend to ignore because to use the analogy, the squeaky wheel always gets the most attention. I think some of the headlines don't really capture the essence of this industry. It's like people talk about how bad the industry is, yet I go to a truck show and see a completely different story, because it doesn't get the headlines, but it represents the majority. And I guess it's a case of, good news doesn't sell in the current era.
No, and
maybe always.
That's an absolute truth. If it bleeds, it leads. I mean, it's much more fun to talk about what bad is going on than what good is happening. And look, the only time that good news really floats is when there's a good vibe. Every once in a while, when people are feeling particularly good, they actually will jump on board. I think about 1994-95, 1984-85 are 2 years in American history that come to mind where people are like, hey, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm willing to accept good news. But most people have a hard time kind of dealing with that. We're going to talk to Packrat in a second. He has a question for you, but I wanted to talk about that import plunge in May. Can you kind of unpack that for us?
Yeah, we've the trade war has really had some damage in the Port of Los Angeles in particular. Volumes dropped because we've been bringing in record volumes since September last year to get ahead of tariffs, even fireworks. Jimmy Max fireworks, we get about 90% of our fireworks from China. They doubled the volume of fireworks in November last year, even before Liberation Day, like 4 months before. But May, they were down 51%, lower, 73% lower than last year, the containers that are filled with fireworks. But here's the thing, with the pull forward of everything to get ahead of tariffs, they already have all of this year's fireworks in warehouses around the country. So no surprise that we've seen a big pull forward of imports. The damage, though, this is the bad part, is the damage has been done in the Port of Los Angeles in particular. Gene Soroka said that longshore jobs are down about 50%. On a normal day, they do about 2,000 jobs. The last 3 weeks, they've averaged 900 jobs a day. Truckers hauling 4 to 5 loads a day before the trade war, down to 2 to 3 loads a day. I think there's been some systemic damage done to the Port of Los Angeles because 50% of its imports come from China. And even with a 55% tariff, we're still going to see a lot of reduction in the volume of work that's coming over to there. So for a state that used to be the bellwether for the US trucking economy, from a data perspective, certainly, it's losing its importance as our largest economy, which is not good for a lot of truckers and dock workers and people in warehouses over there, and truckers that rely on getting out of California with decent volumes. So the trade war is having an impact. Volumes are down. I think there's a lot of imports that have been already delivered into the country. There will be some deficits, though, if I could sort of wrap up on one point. China's great with labour-intensive manufacturing, where you need a lot of labour, menswear, toys, linen, women's apparel, footwear. They were down about 25% in May, about 21% year over year. So we're seeing a big reduction in those goods from China that require a lot of labour. I don't know that there's time to catch up because we're already past the point where a lot of those imports have to be ordered in Asia to get them into warehouses here before peak shipping season. So the general consensus of us analysts is that all of the advanced ordering of imports from overseas has meant that we're in peak season now. So we're seeing a peak season, and that the rest of the year will be pretty flat.
Interesting, by the way, this is complete freakonomics thinking right here, so I apologize for what I'm about to say. I'm interested to see if these policies maintain, if we're consistent about them, if we begin to see there's been a great leveling in American fashion over the past decade. More and more people dress like more and more other people, a certain kind of, except for, freaks on one side or the other. Everybody kind of looks the same. I'm wondering sometimes if, in fact, we might begin to see a separation again, because for people who have money, the impact on clothes is not that high. For those who don't, they may start buying stuff that's being recycled. You know what I'm saying? They may start buying stuff that fashion-wise is 3 and 4 years older, as people kind of run down inventory that doesn't get the markup because it doesn't have the tariff attached, if you dig where I'm coming from. I don't know if that's a reality, but it just occurred to me. I wonder if we'll see a change in fashion based simply on our access to cheap clothing may, in fact, change a little bit over the next couple of years. Your thoughts really quickly.
I think it will. I'm dusting off my platform shoes and bell-bottom pants.
I don't know if that's a reality, but I suddenly hear myself out there, Dean. That's kind of crazy. Something popped in. That was a weird thing to happen. By the way, though, our good friend Joe J told me that my joke was platinum dad joke there. Fred Flintstone has joined the conversation. Mark has jumped in. Our good friend Chowder says that mechanic also does transmission fluid, so he doesn't get stuck in one gear. Very bad. Thank you, sir. Thank you. We got Pack Rat on the phone who actually has a phone call question for you, Dean. Let's bring him on in. Hey, Pack Rat.
Hi, good morning, Jimmy, Mac, and Dean. Before I get to my question, Dean, where do you find time to work, given that you do all those truck videos?
I'm on pretty much 24/7. I find time. I'm busy, but everywhere you go, trucks are there. It's easy. It's not difficult if you're looking, because trucks are everywhere all the time.
That is true. I asked my brother. You put a picture. You put one a video of a Diamond T Rio, and I asked my brother if he'd ever worked on those trucks. He says yes. In his early days as a mechanic, he's actually worked on the Diamond Ts.
Yeah, there was a lot of them at Madison, Wisconsin. Yeah. A lot of Diamond Ts of all vintages. Gorgeous old trucks. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the question I have for you is, as I think everybody knows, there's a little unease in the Middle East there with Iran, and the fuel prices already jumped yesterday in Canada, 10 cents a liter, which if you're buying 1,800 liters a week, that's a poke in the eye. So where do you see this going? Like, is this going to help our freight rates going to adjust accordingly? Because right now they're not very good. We are in a freight recession here in. I wouldn't say recession, probably more like depression.
Yeah, we are. But we've been in one for a couple of years now. The impact of last week's 10 cent per gallon rise here in the US was it effectively put operating costs up a penny per mile. The problem is that rates are still going down. So for those that have a fuel surcharge mechanism to add onto the line haul rate, fuel surcharge went up about 2 cents a mile last week because of that 10 cent per mile jump. But I fear, West Texas is sitting at about 74.36 this morning. I fear that if futures prices continue to rise, the retail market will catch up eventually. It generally lags by a couple of weeks, and then it'll stay high and it'll be very slow to come down. So diesel prices went up 10 cents a gallon last week. I expect them to continue going up while ever this war continues, because the risk is that Iran starts to impact global oil supplies through the Strait of Hormuz, which is where about 20% of the world's crude transits. It's only 30 miles wide. If they start to impact global crude supplies, you will feel it at the fuel pump within the month. So that's the biggest risk we face, because on the other side, the risk of them doing that is kind of relatively low at the moment, because most of their crude goes to China, and if they impact the Strait of Hormuz to impact global shipping, they're hurting themselves. So there's not, and we've got a lot of supply of crude oil in the world. So the risk of diesel prices hitting $5.80 again this summer, relatively low. But if this war continues in the Middle East and we see crude at $100 a barrel, unfortunately, you will see a lot of carriers that are struggling to get by exit this industry really quickly. And of course, that will flip the rate situation in the favour of carriers again.
Well, I hope so. I hope because if we go like back in 2022 when our fuel got up to $2.35 a liter, if it gets up to $2 a liter, I might as well call my trustee and pack it in, because loads right now from Toronto to Chicago are paying $8.50. At that rate, once my carrier takes their cut, I pay the fuel. I'll have $125 left over, maybe, and it's a 10-hour drive, so it's not looking good.
Yeah. Packrat, we got to. Dean, we're going to take a break. We'll come back on the other side, and we'll let you keep unpacking that. Packrat, we got to let you float. All the best. Dean will continue to answer that question as well. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Jimmy, Mac, and Dean, all the best.
By the way, Dean, one of my favorite far sides of all time as we head into the break, Dean Croke joins us this morning on Road Gang Radio. Go to RadioNemo.com, go to the Tube of You, go to the Book of Face, go to Odyssey, go to iHeartRadio. I'm going to keep going. It's going to get longer and longer as this whole process goes on. One of my favorite far sides of all time, Dean, I don't even have to tell you what the picture looks like. It simply says, through a gross navigational error, the Love Boat steams into the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to be back on the other side of this break as the sounds of Dixieland jazz drift into the Degas House over here in the city of New Orleans, less than 2 minutes' drive from where Dave started the Road Gang. We'll be right back. Hold on tight. Don't get thrown to the wolves.
Check out the new over-the-top lineup at participating Country Pride and Iron Skillet restaurants. 3 gigantic sandwiches loaded with flavor. Try the chicken parm stack, the big country combo, or the ultimate smash melt. The ultimate smash melt. 2 delicious smash burger patties, surrounded by 2 grilled cheese sandwiches. 2 sandwiches in 1. Visit your favorite Country Pride or Iron Skillet restaurant and come hungry.
Available for dine-in only at participating Country Pride and Iron Skillet restaurants inside TA or Petro Travel Centers.
Pro drivers, say hello to your perfect fuel stop, Racetrack. Perfect as in hello, everything you need on the go. Oh, hi there, dedicated truck lanes. What's up, hot and delicious grab-and-go food? And hello, cat scales, clean restrooms, and large, easy-to-maneuver lots. Racetrack has what you want so you can get in, get out, and get back on the road, turning miles into money. Next time you need to stop, say hello to the fuel stop built for pro drivers. Racetrack, whatever gets you going.
Exceptional value and exceptional values. That's Bennett Trucking. A core commitment of faith, family, and freedom has driven Bennett to being the leading provider of innovative, integrated transportation solutions, both at home and abroad. Bennett's values are not just compatible with providing high-paying jobs and unmatched customer service. They're inseparable. If you're looking for an employer or a partner who believes the best business model is being a model citizen, then Bennett Trucking is the place for you. Go to BennettIG.com and find the folks who share your values.
The Joshua Chamberlain Society is unlike any other veterans organization. It's truly a family, and I know that firsthand from working with them myself. Their mission is to make wounded veterans and families of deceased veterans feel the support and appreciation of their community for life. Our veterans' injuries are permanent, and so is the JCS support. From monetary assistance like paying utility bills or college funds to helping our heroes find purpose, JCS is a family that surrounds and supports the heroes who have sacrificed so much. Learn more and make your donation at chamberlainsociety.org. That's chamberlainsociety.org.
Oh, this is Road Gang Radio, and you're riding shotgun with not one, but 2 very intelligent guys. Jimmy Mack and I guess Dean Croke still here?
Dean Croke is still large and in charge. By the way, we're broadcasting from the Fastport studio. Fastport, by the way, solves America's toughest recruiting and workforce challenges through research, technology, and the people. From registered apprenticeships to veteran readiness, you can learn more at fastport.com or nationalapprenticeship.org. By the way, truck up, and get down. Truckdown.com serves over 50 states because it also serves the 8 provinces as well. If you break down and need to find a provider, download that app. Go to Truckdown. They've been doing it since 1997. They know of what they app. Go to the Truckdown app and make the world a better place for yourself to get back on the road. Really quick, on the media of social, I posted a picture, Dean. Our good friend Showtime, I'm going to give him full credit, sent me a little gift for the studio here. We're going to put it up. We're debating whether it goes in the studio or outside, screwed hard to the door, so people can see truck route at the door and not knock and look for a hotel room here at the Degas House. It happens from time to time. We're still breaking stuff in over here, man. Welcome back. How are you? What is the week? What's the week looking like for you? Where are you headed next? Where's the next adventure taking Dean and his Grumpy Pete machine?
Yeah, a couple of weeks off, but then I'm down for the opening of your new studio. That'll be my next trip.
July 23rd. That is right. We're going to have Lindsay Lawler down here. We're going to have Jedi Mind Trick. Some other performers are going to be joining us. We're going to be launching Lindsay's new show, Absolutely Correctamundo. We should write. People got a preview of it yesterday, Dean, with the 2 guests, the female firefighter, who's also a gifted writer of a memoir, and then we had an artist who joined us as well, who was just spectacular. We'll get over that in a second. But speaking of some time off, a lot of people are going to be grilling, right? So grilling season is heating up, and that can help the industry, right?
Yeah, it can. Can I just finish off Packrat's point?
Oh,
and then
please.
we can jump into grilling season.
Go everywhere you want to go. Go.
One of the things that's happened, and he's right on the money. I went back and looked at 2019 rates in July. So June of 2019. On the Toronto to Chicago lane that Packrat's running, you were getting $150 a load more in a freight recession in 2019. Right now, he's getting about $1,035 according to our 7-day rolling average rates, excluding fuel. So when I go back and look at Toronto into the Great Lakes, Ohio River Valley, because of the trade war, there has been a shift down in the number of loads moving and rates. So it's observable now. There's a step change down. Rates are down about probably 13 cents a mile compared to the monthly average last year. The volume of loads moving across the border out of Toronto down 13%, and they're stabilised around there. So some systemic damage it's been done to that particular lane. That's why rates are sitting at some of the lowest we've seen probably in 5 years. So we just wrap that up because that's a pretty big deal for all those carriers that run out of that market.
Well, and the other thing about a war with Tehran, whether it's Israel and kind of a localized regional war, or if things really heat up and the Russians, who actually have aligned themselves with Iran and the United States, is then caught in a pretty sticky wicket of a predicament at that point. But it isn't so much the war or not the war, it's the uncertainty. It goes back to the same thing as tariffs. A lot of the price increases we've seen haven't been about the supply of oil as much as it's been about speculators feeling like that's going to begin to become a problem. When it becomes a real problem, then that sticker shock you talked about. But right now, a lot of the issue is uncertainty. And, to war or not to war becomes a big uncertainty, correct?
Yeah, and I mean, Jerome Powell said it yesterday during the Fed Reserve statement. There's a lot of evidence that the economy is sheltering in place. To use a hurricane season analogy, we are sheltering in place. There's a lot of business and consumer uncertainty surrounding tariff policies. Retail sales are soft. There was a big drop in housing starts yesterday, a huge drop in permits for single-family homes, which are permits that builders lodge to build a home, to break ground. They are dropping. They're down about 8%. GDP growth is down. Unemployment's forecast to go up. So higher inflation forecasts, no more rate decreases. So there's a real pause that's been going on. Now, that extends to all of our customers in trucking that make things that we put in our trucks. So that's where there's a real freeze that's gone on. We are seeing some large carriers cut costs in ways that are unprecedented. We saw earnings calls in the first quarter, some of the worst in 35 years. So there's some real pain going on in the trucking industry at a time when you really need volumes to be rising through the spring into summer. The demand is not there. It's moving sideways, and the predictors that we look for are kind of disappearing off the horizon. It looks like 2026 before we start to see this market improve. Like, that's a long way off for a lot of carriers who are struggling at the moment. Packrat's talking about really marginal rates. I'd hate to be in a position trying to finance an expensive truck right now because the rates aren't there to support it. I mean, even if you have an older truck that you've paid off, you're eating away your equity. Your return on capital is diminishing quickly. So these are tough times for carriers, and it's been tough for a couple of years. We're in a perilous situation here. And Jimmy Mac, the trade war couldn't have happened at a worse time because we were just coming out of this freight recession. There's no question we were improving in January, February. And then March hit, and it kind of tanked the second quarter that we're still in. But the second quarter really needs to be a cracking quarter where volumes are up, rates are up, volumes are up, and you're moving a lot more freight. And you kind of recover a little bit more revenue that you lost in the first quarter, always the slowest quarter. So the rest of the year, as I said to the folks at the Wall Street Journal yesterday, the rest of the year we're going to be playing catch up. But I don't know if there's, some of the carriers out there are really going to struggle to get through this if we don't see certainty in trade policy. People that make things that we haul on our trucks, they need certainty. They need policy that they can bank on, literally bank on.
Here's the other, and by the way, the domino effect or the ripple effect, however you want to look at it, are unintended consequences, occult patterns, as it were, or these irregular patterns. Here's the problem. Forget about people who are doing bad. Let's say you're doing okay and you need to upgrade the people that work for you. You want to go out and recruit a really good group of drivers. One of the ways you recruit them is people can compete with you on pay. They can compete with you on giving people a proper lifestyle. The last component of recruiting, I always feel like, is do you offer people the equipment that they can slide into that will give them a quality of job? Quality of life is wonderful, but you want to be in comfortable seats. You want to be in the newest of technology and all that stuff. If you don't know what the Fed is going to do, because the Fed doesn't know what the trade policy is going to be, and we go on and on and on, you don't make the upgrades, which means you don't have the equipment to attract the kind of employees you want to, and maybe lose out to the guy who made that investment a year and a half ago. So you're also caught in a stasis as well. That's the thing about sheltering in place, is that there are some places that are a little further upstream where the world continues to roll on. You see success stories when you go places. If you're in a position to begin to compete with your competitors, you can't do it if you can't buy new equipment. So you may be doing okay, but you can't take the final step. It isn't just about people who are hurting. It's about people who want to get better, correct?
Yeah. I've been studying financials at truck companies for probably 40 years in various roles. And the one thing that I see that's common throughout the world, I've worked in 3 continents, and the one thing I see carriers not do is get a return on capital employed, ROCE in accounting terms. A lot of guys don't figure out, and girls, don't figure out, if they've got 50 grand in a truck and they put that in a bank, that's going to generate a return on capital. So if you've got 50 grand in a truck, how much per mile do I need to get the equivalent return from that money invested in a bank? And I hardly ever see that in the rate calculation. I see fuel, tires, phone costs, communication costs, oil, all that sort of stuff. I rarely see a component, that says I need 7 cents a mile to give me a return on capital, because if you don't get the return on capital that you've got in your business, you're always trading down. To your point, you lack the capital growth in your business and the cash flow to actually be able to buy another truck of the same standard or even better, a newer truck. Return on capital is absolutely critical, but it's one of the least discussed in the industry globally.
It's the second biggest reason people go out of business in the first year. Sometimes people don't make a bad choice. They know exactly what the market needs. They find the niche, they amp up, and they get so many orders, they get swamped and overwhelmed, and they collapse. It happens. It happens. They can't keep up with the staffing. The work quality begins to suffer. And in the middle of having an overworked schedule, their business simply collapses under the weight of being undercapitalized in that particular situation. We have pitched enough gloom and doom. I want to talk about grilling. Let's go on to grilling here, Dean.
The good news.
The good news.
May was strawberry month. July is hot dog month. In the middle of all that, we've got grilling season. So that's some good news, because it means summer. It means we've got a lot more people partying, buying things, buying proteins, buying produce. So we've got a produce season that's underway. It's not so exciting. Grilling season is underway, although sales are down. when you look at some of the earnings calls of the big food service companies like US Foods and Gorton's and the likes of those, they're seeing their box count down. So people are buying less, to your point a little bit earlier. We're buying less, we're buying more frozen, we're buying more canned. But I think we'll still be grilling. It's interesting stats when you look at this. The average American's going to have 5 barbecues and host 4 over the summer. The ideal cookout for those that are interested, 11 guests, and they believe it's essential that people bring something to share. But the deal is that barbecues, hamburgers are the top choice, 77%, hot dogs 65%, chicken 55%, steak 54%. So a lot of those go into refrigerated trailers. So that's a reefer market boost. That's why we typically see reefer rates go up around July 4th.
Reefer madness. I just wanted to do that.
This
Sorry.
year it's a speed bump. Yeah, reefer madness. It is a crazy season because, Jimmy Mac, rates normally go up right now. We're a couple of weeks away from July 4 when rates, peak seasonally. When I look at rates today, reefer rates have dropped 5 cents a mile this week. So still time to catch up, but we are not heading in the right direction. There's still an excess of capacity. When you think about the excess of capacity and then lower demand because we're all buying less, it just means rates are not going in the right direction, except in Central Florida where there's a bit of a shortage of trucks at the moment. But I give you a sense of where, if you think about national loads of produce in relation to July 4 and grilling season, produce loads this week, according to the USDA, paying about 13 cents a mile lower than what they were last year. So that's not good news for carriers because we're seeing lower rates, and volumes are down because we've got a very sluggish produce season underway. So not enough to lift us off the ground. Produce volumes out of California are down about, probably year to date, they're down 19%. I counted the number of loads moved out of California this week. They're 5,400 fewer than last year. 5,400 fewer loads of fruit and veg out of California. California's the bellwether. As goes California, so does the rest of the country when it comes to grilling and produce season. Those rates are down substantially on last year, and we've got about 5,500 fewer truckloads of produce moving. So when you think about where do we go this year, we're already heading in the wrong direction compared to where we normally would be leading into July 4, because you could almost always bank on July 4 being the spike in reefer and dry van rates. This year, almost like a speed bump. It's almost like they're heading flat, and this week they're heading down. Now, they'll probably change next week. There'll be some markets that are pretty hot for carriers, but nationally, not heading in the right direction. But again, it's like everything else, Jimmy Mac, whether you're talking housing or construction or solar panels or machinery, demand is really soft at the moment.
Yeah, and by the way, once again, 2026, I mean, we know next July 4th, God willing, and the creek don't rise is going to be huge. But I mean, there are real echoes of 75 to 76 here. I mean, history isn't repeating itself, but there are certain late 70s, mid 70s vibes going on here in regards to the economy. There seems to be, in regards to purchasing, a creeping sense of malaise. I almost feel like we're having this July 23rd party just to kind of give people something to look forward to. I just feel like people aren't looking forward. Is that what you've got? I mean, are you getting that sense?
Normally I'm incredibly optimistic, right? The American consumer is very resilient. They've proven that over the last couple of decades.
Fantastic. They're great. They're the best.
Yes, something feels different this time around. Like not just economically, but ideologically, geopolitically. There's a lot of stuff happening in the world that kind of makes us shelter in place. We go to our worst place. We go to protect everything. If you've got a business, you budget for the worst case scenario. So I just see everybody pulling back. I see truck companies cutting from 230 trucks down to 90. I see them cutting headcounts. I see large fleets parking trucks, furloughing drivers. I just think until we get some sense of direction and we have more good news, because I look for the good news every day and I struggle to find things that tell us that we're on the right track from a trucking perspective. I'd struggle. Normally, every week there's some good news in trucking. At the moment, it's generally not that positive. I haven't seen that for a long time because we just don't have strong oil production. They're drilling fewer wells. We're not hauling as many drill pipe casing loads out of Houston. Everywhere you look, there's just things are at a much lower cadence.
And it's the uncertainty. It's the uncertainty, because I want to make this point about what you're saying, because even in the darkest times, people always forget that even during the Great Depression and the V-shaped recession and you could make a case that there was a recession from 1978 to about 1982, and it got really deep. The one kind of compensatory thing in the middle of that was because of the oil crisis, there was a genuine boom in Texas and Louisiana because of crude oil. Yep. I mean, a genuine boom. I mean, I don't mean like a little boomlet. I mean, literally people racing down there. And please, I would love you to tell me, where are people racing to? Talk about the idea of, staying at home, sheltering in place, but are there any safe harbors? Because safe harbor is a different thing. Safe harbor is not the same as sheltering in place. Safe harbor means, wait, there's some action going on over here. Let's get in on this. Because as you know, one of the things reason we love you here is you're a guy who chases the action. Where is the next big thing happening? How do we get there? Do you see anything like that, Dean? Anything?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Awesome.
Ironically, it's got to do with AI and data centers and this new, we're in a seminal moment here in the US where AI technology is changing our landscape at an exponential rate. I think we mentioned it on the show before. I listened to Bill Gates from Microsoft talk about their 50-year anniversary. And he said that we're about to see more change in the next 10 years than we've had in the last 50. It's Bill Gates, a guy who knows a little bit about technology. So I think we're on the precipice of change that we haven't ever imagined in our lifetimes. I haven't. I'm seeing it in our business change the way truck drivers negotiate with brokers, using AI agents to do the negotiation and bidding for them. Like these sorts we haven't seen this before, but I think the rate of change is what's scariest. This isn't sort of a technology that's, gradually coming into the market. This is coming on fast. And I fear that those that aren't ahead of this or certainly on top of it, they're going to get left behind. We're in a crazy time right now. So my point is that what's driving that are these huge data centers and then the demand is still going on. It'll be there for a long time, but these are overdimensional loads of these big, high and wide units that are data centers, cooling units, cooling systems, air conditioning systems. Data centers are the big growth market. You probably need a triaxial drop deck or a extendable or probably an RGN type setup, but you were talking about specialized equipment a little bit earlier. That's one market that I see incredible growth opportunities for carriers.
I'm going to say this too about and by the way, I think you're right there. Mark Cuban also was speculating on this, saying that the real opportunity he thinks with AI is for people to begin to pivot to IRL. Is that if you really are looking for any action as well too, remember that in real life sort of things, and that means events, which means as AI begins to accelerate, people's desire for the real is going to get even, and it literally is sometimes a vibe thing that you spend so much time online, and then of course what AI contributes to being online is extensive in its ability to kind of rapid fire do a summation of a search you do, to help you find what you're looking for, to structure people's thoughts for them to a large degree, but then it does also on the flip side make people not want to look at videos online when they've been manufactured, not want to look at news when it has been done that way. And I'm only half joking that the reason we decided to do an event on July 23rd was to bring people into the real, but also, reaching out to Rebecca and making the half joke about the Atri event was, partially pitching it, but also this awareness of the sense that there is a desperate need now for more immediacy. And because immediacy requires construction, requires catering, requires all that in real life stuff, there may be opportunities there, but that's still in development. That's still kind of unfolding because we don't know if there's an AI wall point where there's a point where it begins to hit a wall and, begins to hallucinate. You know about the whole thing that there's a point where if you feed too much data to AI, it begins to hallucinate in how it responds to you. It becomes almost almost absurdist in what it begins to say at some point. But all of that stuff has a lot of possibility. So just kind of wanted to add my 2 cents on that. All right, let's talk about, and our good friend Mike Lutzenberg, Mike Lutzy, came on the show and talked about this, the 100 Deadliest Days of Summer. Let's talk about that a little bit, shall we? Since tomorrow is, as the good pastor pointed out, today is Thursday and tomorrow is the first day of summer.
Yeah, this is a wild time for truckers in particular. On top of construction season and having just done 3,000 miles out to Wisconsin and back, the construction season is just nuts. I mean, we're still seeing infrastructure projects all over the country. So we often joke that there's 2 seasons in trucking, winter and construction. Construction adds a lot of stress and delays for carriers in particular on a lot of our interstates. Worse, though, is that we've got an increased number of car drivers out there, passenger vehicles. Even worse on top of that, we've now got a lot of teen drivers on the road for the first time, very inexperienced. They're about 3 times more likely to be involved in a fatal crash compared to older drivers. Distraction, using phones, multiple passengers, speeding, impairment, you name it. But the broader issue is that for truckers, accidents actually increase in summer. And this applies to drivers of trucks, not just car drivers. But because we have up to 15 hours sunlight, we get less sleep over the summer. So when you get less sleep, you're more impaired, you're more tired, and that's the real reason I think we see. Summer's a great time. You have a lot more fun. You go out later, but when you go out later in the evening and you have more light, you shorten your sleep window. And less sleep means more accidents, more impaired, distracted driving. So the 100 deadly days of summer are very, very real, but not just for other drivers on the road, but for truckers themselves because of the amount of sunlight we get. So it becomes really important. I was listening to your guest yesterday talk about sleep, and it was very interesting because truckers have got to control light. You've actually got to simulate darkness in your sleeper cab, and a lot do to block out the light. That's sort of up till 10 p.m. You've got to block that out, trick the brain into thinking that, sunset was 7 p.m. instead of 9:30 p.m. So 100 deadly days of summer, really dangerous period. If ever there was a period of the year where you really need to be on your guard and driving for everyone else, it's from tomorrow onwards all the way through to Memorial Day. Or Labor Day, sorry.
This is what I love about this new platform. Dean was referring to Dr. Ben Kligler for Highway to Health, of course. If you missed that, guess what you can do? You can go to YouTube, and that interview in and of itself is there for you to be able to enjoy. And it really was a really upbeat approach to how we can go about sleeping as well. So we actually have access to that. People want to check that out. Something interesting is happening over here, though, Dean, and this is why I always encourage people to remember this kind of stuff. So it's a little tweak they can do. If any of you guys out there ever have access to a pool, and I know a lot of you guys say, I don't have a pool, but there are clubs, there are opportunities to go swimming all over the place. I think part of the reason why, I don't think people even think about it, why parents love taking their kids swimming in the summer is, despite all that extra light, man, getting a good swim in, Dean, puts you to sleep. It puts you out, doesn't it?
Does, yeah. I think it makes you feel better too, right? So the positiveness of swimming and the exercise, you actually feel better as a person. It's not just the fact that it tires you out, but I think it's the mental aspect is just as important. I know I feel good when I do some exercise. Swimming is always one of those great therapies I've found. You sort of disconnect from the world.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. And I wanted to kind of shift there for a second since we are talking about those deadly days of summer. By the way, our good friend D. Taylor says, good morning, resistors and Radio Nemo. Jimmy Mack, 15L resisting this morning. 15L is resisting this morning. The other thing is, I wanted to ask you, as somebody who drove a lot, did you have any regular R&R activities? Was there something that if you could get that squeezed into either the day or the week once or twice, it actually allowed you to have a better sleep or a more relaxed, focused drive?
It's going to sound strange, but
nope, it won't.
Having a 20-minute or an hour and a half nap in my hammock under the trailer in Australia. That was absolutely magic because you had a nice rocking motion. The wind would blow. you got to be high enough off the ground so those nasty things that want to kill you don't bite you on the rear end. But it was the best time. There's nothing like sleeping in a hammock under a trailer. That's probably the weirdest thing you'll hear today, I think.
No, actually, it's really funny because, Lindsay has a great line. She says, in between over and next is a hammock that we should take a moment to lay inside of. And I love that.
Yeah.
That is it. That a hammock, just like a really comfortable reclining chair, puts you in a position where you're like, I'm not going to bed, but I am taking a break. I'm not going to get a long sleep in here, but I am going to recharge my battery, and just a really kind of great place to kind of sit and exist. So you got the next couple of days off. I know you're going to have a wonderful weekend. I know you get a chance to see some folks that you care about. Wanted to ask you really quickly before we have to wrap up this segment. What is the next piece of video that you're posting? What are you getting up there next? What should we be looking for?
Well, I was just counting it this morning. I'm up to a couple of hundred videos from Madison, Wisconsin's the Historical Society show. So I've still got a bunch of editing to do there. So for the next few days, I'll be finishing off some of those editing extents. Then I've got a bunch of other content from the road trip itself, from the GoPro cameras that I have sitting on the side of the truck or on the windscreen and the dash cam. So it'll be more of the road trip to Madison and finishing off some of those videos. I just finished off a video on the truck from Convoy, one of the trucks actually used in the movie Convoy, with Patrick Bruno, the owner of the truck. He was in Madison, and I did an interview with him, putting the finishing touches on that. Now, that was a great interview to see the original truck and trailer used in the movie. Of course, not the truck at the end that goes off the bridge, but one of the other trucks. So I think there were 4 or maybe 5 of those R700 Max in that movie. Jimmy Mack, did you realize that when Steven Spielberg made that movie, was he 23?
No, it's not Spielberg. That's Duel. That's Duel. Spielberg is 23 for Duel. Yeah, I know that. He actually had just done a night gallery episode and lied his way into it. Here's the cool thing about Duel, Dean. Watch Duel and then watch Jaws. And you see he's actually warming up for it, dude. It's the coolest thing. Jaws turns 50 years old next week.
Yep.
Do you feel old?
Wow.
Do you feel old? I feel
I haven't been in the water since. Yeah.
You're Australian. What are you talking about? You're supposed
I live near Cape Cod. I was going in the water near Cape Cod ever.
Oh my God! Oh my God! You go in the water, shark goes in the water. Farewell and adieu to you, fair Dean Croke. That's it. I got to let you go, man. Thank you. I get to say this, DAT's chief analyst, but I also get to say this: regular contributor to Radio Nemo and original member of RGR. Dean Croke, thank you very much, brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. See you soon, guys.